Hello, everyone. My name is Miles Schofield. Thanks for joining us today for another AOPEN webinar. This time we got MVIX with us today. And of course, we're talking about how to re-engage your faculty and students with digital signage. The main idea behind today's webinar is there's been a lot of changes in terms of regulations, split classes, back and forth. We've all talked about that before, but really what we're talking about now that it's education buying season again is what are the key applications that the schools can use and have adopted to start to control the communication in schools, interact with students, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well. So we're really focusing in on what people are buying, where they're buying it, and especially if there's going to be Chromebook shortages again, these types of solutions are perfect to sell and integrate to schools. So let's break down what we're talking about today. So first off, my name is Miles Schofield. I'm the solutions manager for AOPEN America. And today, as I mentioned, we got MVIX, a global brand, one of the leaders in digital signage. I got the face of MVIX today, and Mike Killian. I've known him for probably 5-6 years. If you look up anything MVIX, he's in every video. He's the guy. So I've got him. He's going to run you through how MVIX approaches the education market, what they offer, and they really focus on a few key things. Working with resellers, having a very specific type of license, really easy setup, easy scalability, just trying to make it as easy as possible for schools to use this solution as possible. He'll dive in all that, get some applications, and also follow up with some of the use cases and experiences they've had specifically for K through 12. After that, I'm just going to highlight how AOPEN plays in this space with our Chrome devices specifically for signage. And then, like usual, I'll go and talk about how I see digital signage and wayfinding and kiosks sort of being adapted into the future in the education market. So that's our webinar for today. It should be about 45 minutes. If you have any questions, type them in the box and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. And of course, if you got a bounce, then we'll always post this VOD and you can always watch it later. So. To kick us off, of course, I'm going to start with Mike Killian from MVIX, and he's going to give you a run through of what MVIX does and how their software works. And so why don't you take it away? Thanks for joining me.
Miles, thanks so much for the intro. Always a pleasure to work with you and the AOPEN team. Great to be back here doing another webinar with you guys. So thanks for taking the time today. As Miles mentioned, for any attendees today, please feel free to insert any questions you have, type them in the chat box. We're going to leave some generous time at the end to go over any questions that you might have about the state of the industry, the state of this technology, MVIX software, AOPEN hardware. So anything and everything you have, throw it at us. If you have to leave early today and you don't have the opportunity to ask us the questions that are on your mind for approaching your market, please feel free to reach out to the AOPEN team and of course the MVIX team after today's webinar, and we'll have some contact info for you to get things running. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, which is pretty exciting. A lot of exciting things happening in the K through 12 market right now. A lot of changes, a lot of districts and individual schools opening back up. A lot of new communication workflows, and our technology here at MVIX, a lot of our processes, a lot of the apps that we have built into our solution center around that type of visual communication. And with changes in workflows that are happening in K through 12 all over the world right now comes a new demand for new ways to communicate and new ways to make communication easy and more effective than it has been historically. And so that's our role in the ecosystem here at MVIX, is to facilitate easy communication with faculty, with students, and also to make it easy for you as a reseller to have these types of discussions and implement this type of technology. So we're going to, of course, spend a few obligatory moments here on digital signage in general, and that's for folks that may be new to this technology or you're familiar with it, but it might have been a year or two since you've had these discussions or sold it, and so you want to maybe brush up a little bit on your digital signage knowledge and kind of the state of the industry and where we are today. From there, we're going to move into a little bit about the benefits of digital signage. What can it do for your clients? What can it do for you as a reseller? Why is it a great technology to be having discussions about, especially with so many facilities and campuses opening back up here in the short term? We're going to talk obviously a little bit about some of the MVIX advantages, what we do that no one else in the market does, and how that's going to benefit you and your customers. We'll give you some examples of digital signage solutions in education. I think this is very relevant, especially given the changing environment that is K through 12 as we know and love today. We have a specific case study and success story carved out for you. We'll spend a moment or two there, but of course you can find that on our website in its entirety. And then at the end, we will go ahead and hand it back to the AOPEN team for exciting info on the AOPEN product line and the state of affairs in the K through 12 market from AOPEN's perspective. So again, folks, any questions, please let us know, and looking forward to hopefully imparting some good industry knowledge on you today. So for those that are new, let's talk about digital signage very briefly here. What is it? How does it work? Why is it important? So digital signage is a communication tool at its heart and core. It is a visual communication tool at its heart and core. Yes, it does have a variety of use cases for audio related communication. We'll get into that a little bit later with things like emergency alerts, for instance, but at its heart and core, digital signage is a visual communication tool. And so in working with AOPEN products and MVIX software, the goal here is to take any and all types of visual communications and open up a channel, if you will, with students, with faculty, with staff, and make communications easier, more streamlined, set of protocols for the school that you're working with. Typically, this technology is going to piggyback on traditional LCD LED displays. We're all familiar with these. The form factors can be quite varied. We have supported solutions starting at the 10-inch diagonal screen size all the way up to 120-inch diagonal, in some cases larger. With the AOPEN set of Chrome boxes and products that are available, you have a wide range of screens that you can support with this technology. So single displays, portrait landscape, interactive displays, which you can walk up and touch and interact with for wayfinding and other use cases, non-interactive displays if that's the route you want to go, video walls in some situations. So a lot you can do with it, but think contextually here, folks, about using display technology to help facilitate this visual communication. The core aspect of this solution is the software, and that's what we're providing. It's called a CMS, a content management software. When I say core, it's kind of the brains of the system that allows you to get content out in a remote fashion to the different AOPEN endpoints that you're going to be deploying for your clients on their network. So whether it's a couple screens at one school or whether it's a couple thousand screens across a district or somewhere in between, what your clients will use to disseminate this content is the content management software that we provide, which of course nowadays is web-based, and that workflow has a lot of advantages, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So for the novice or those that are new to digital signage, how does this technology work? Well, the user logs in through their device. It could be a PC, it could be a laptop, it could be a tablet, it could be a mobile device like a cell phone. They'll go ahead and access our software in the cloud. They will go ahead and send content out to the various AOPEN media player endpoints. Those endpoints obviously are on the client's network. They will download the content. They store it on the hard drive, which is, as AOPEN resellers are very generous hard drives in terms of storage, so no issues there. They'll go ahead and download the content and then play it back repeatedly from the media player. So you do have the ability to kind of minimize impact on network traffic and resources at site. The other goal here is that should your client lose internet connectivity at one of the screens or one of the schools, they still have the ability to display their content in an offline fashion. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the system, high level. For those that have technical questions, please feel free to reach out to either team offline, and we'll be happy to do a further dive for you on the nitty gritty of how the system works. Let's talk for a minute about why digital signage is so important and kind of what it can do. So prior to 2020, obviously there was a variety of communication challenges facing most K through 12 schools and districts as well, throughout the world. And obviously there's several layers to these communication challenges. You have individual students and faculty and staff at one location, and that's its own set of challenges. How do we get people to where they need to be? How do we inform them of events? How do we inform them of changes to events? How do we sell tickets maybe? How do we get emergency alerts out? That type of stuff. In today's environment, obviously with schools reopening in some cases for the first time in over a year, students, faculty, and staff all being unsure about how some of these curriculums are going to be achieved, about how the day-to-day is going to look. There's a significantly higher demand right now for this type of visual communication. And as Miles mentioned, we're headed back into school purchasing season here. So it's a great time to be having these discussions with your clients. This type of technology at its soul is designed to be easy to use for your customer. Let me put it that way. So the goal here is to enable communication outcomes, enable successful communication in a visual or sometimes audio set of capacities, but to make that an easy process for your customer. We all know that school administrators, whether it's a single location or the district level, have a ton of stuff going on. There's especially nowadays, there's a lot of things that they have to do to keep these schools up and running successfully. Why add another thing to their plate? So where possible, this technology automates these communication styles and automates some of these workflows to help get it out. This type of technology, digital signage in general, is very, very attention getting. We have found through some of our studies, some of our partnerships, some of our market research, that the recall rate on digital signage is up to 83%. So what that means is that students and faculty alike that we've polled have the ability to recall up to 83% of this messaging at a point in time in the future, which statistically that is significantly above other types of communication technologies like email, like traditional printed signage that would be in the hallways, et cetera, et cetera. So very attention getting tool here as well, which helps to recall some of the information that you're looking to get out or that your clients are looking to get out. Updating visual communications on digital signage is quick. You can have, in today's environment, you can have communications, especially things like emergency alerts that are time sensitive. You can have these hit these displays in seconds, milliseconds, basically real time. And that's part of the goal here. In addition to automating these communication methods, you want to have as close to real-time communication as you can, especially if there's an issue that is time sensitive and needs to be handled. So that's one of the big reasons why you should have these discussions with clients, is the unique nature of rapid response, rapid content deployment with digital signage as a technology versus other communication tools. For folks that are getting back to the physical teaching space, teaching environment, lots of studies happening right now about the ability of this technology to reduce stress overall. So for students that's maybe the stress of being around other folks again, or maybe the stress in a face-to-face learning environment and the challenges that that can bring for certain students. For your faculty and staff, it's usually stress surrounding different types of procedures and protocols, how those are supposed to be followed, how we're going to inform people if there's an issue on site. And so a lot of different content options available, and also a lot of different tools available to help these sites and these districts reduce stress for that population of folks that are getting back into in-person learning. A lot of ways that students, faculty, and parents can access upcoming event info, of course, in today's world, but this is another channel to facilitate that. One recent poll that we had done indicated that around 73%, so about 3/4 of educational institutions, currently see digital signage as critical for the future of communication at their institutions or at their district level. So this technology, folks, is not only here to stay, but the reliance on this technology is basically up and to the right, and that trend is going to continue as we look at 2022 and beyond. So no better time to be having discussions with your clients surrounding digital signage than right now. One aspect of working in the K-12 environment that is, I think, a little bit challenging when it comes to communication is the fact that over 90% of students, at least in North America, have cell phones these days. So this technology actually winds up a lot of times competing with cell phones, but there's some advantages to this technology over a kid or a group of kids staring at their screen all day. So engagement with this type of technology, when you do it right, can be significantly more enhanced than engagement with traditional phone-based visual communications. And so I bring this up because you're going to get a lot of questions from school administrators and district administrators about, how do we get these kids' attention? How do we keep their attention? And that's exactly where the MVIX team comes in. We have a team of consultants here to help you have those discussions, a content design team as well to help with getting these content strategies just right for the demographic and age group of kids at your client's location or group of schools that they're working with. So please let us know when you have these types of discussions so that we can help you get a cohesive strategy that focuses on engagement for the students and engagement for obviously the faculty and the staff as well. Emergency alerts at this point in time are basically a necessity, and I hate to say it that way. I wish that we were all seeing a lot more positive news than we typically do. But emergency alerts are absolutely a integral part of any well-functioning or highly functioning K-12 school or K-12 district. Having the ability to get out mass communications and mass alerts to the faculty, that especially response faculty, response staff, students, and parents as well is ultra critical. And so this type of technology is designed to integrate with other systems that you may or may not have installed or implemented for your clients. So when you take a look at other mass notification tools that are oftentimes software driven and contribute to text message campaigns and email campaigns and things like that, this tool is a supplement and is part of that ecosystem and can help keep people informed rapidly and keep them informed in an accurate fashion as they work through whatever the situation is. So something to keep in mind too. We don't like to lead with that for obvious reasons, but that will come up in your discussions with your customers. So a lot of tools out there to help facilitate information sharing in those types of situations. We've talked about kind of the instantaneous side of this technology and getting content out very rapidly. There's also the aspect of this where it can be remotely viewed. There are a lot of ways, whether you have a hybrid student population returning, meaning in-person and remote learning, or whether your client's district is going just to in-person learning or somewhere on either end of the spectrum. There's a lot of ways to view this type of content remotely. Obviously, the preferred method is on screens at the location there using AOPEN Chrome boxes to power everything, but you also have the ability in certain circumstances to use digital signage technology to get this content out remotely to those students and faculty that are learning from home or teaching from home. So that's something to consider as well. It's part of a larger ecosystem, if you will. For those not familiar with MVIX, there are several things that we do differently and do very well in the CMS market. The first component is scalability. We have a lot of clients that start out with a few units here and there. You turn around in a few years, the entire district is deploying digital signage or has deployed digital signage, and you have users at different levels using the technology with permissions for their schools versus the district-wide communication, ways to help the IT departments manage, or you guys manage what's actually happening at those endpoints. Are they online, offline, et cetera? So scalability is a huge focus for us. And if you don't have a demo account with MVIX, I'd encourage you to get a free demo account as soon as you can. You can see some of the really powerful tools that we have to help in managing the AOPEN endpoints and managing this, this tool in general. Ease of use is one of the foremost most commonly held discussions here on our development team. We want the client to be giving you 2 thumbs up every time you talk about it, finding new ways to add digital signage to their school because they're so excited about the program itself, and they like to log in, they like to use the tool. So ease of use is a huge, huge focus for us, and one that keeps, for us, customers coming back at the rate that they do. I mentioned users briefly a moment ago, but for those customers that have, district level management at individual schools, and then maybe staff who are just using a few features, you can absolutely break out these different roles, give them permissions, restrict them how you want, empower them how you want, and I think that contributes very powerfully to what this tool can achieve, especially at scale. One of the most unique aspects of our solution and what we've been bringing to the market for the last 16 years is the fact that we offer a industry-only perpetual license for this technology. So it is possible to procure a AOPEN player and have a MVIX firmware license on top of it at a one-time cost for some of your clients who maybe don't have a super huge budget right now, or maybe they're unsure of what the budget's going to look like in the next 12 months with how everything's changing. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door with certain schools or certain districts. You can talk about a truly enterprise class digital signage solution, but at a one-time cost, which you're not going to find anywhere else. So lots of good stuff to look forward to there. Security, for those districts that place a high valuation on IT security, some of our practices here, some of our reporting or auditing that we have at the CMS level is industry leading as well. And we also offer 24/7 tech support. So both for you as the reselling brand, and then also for your customer, a lot of easy access options for you to get a hold of our tech support team, no matter what time of day or night it is. So that mixed with our content integrations, I think, is a pretty powerful platform. And again, if you're not sure how to have these discussions with your customers, please reach out to the AOPEN team or the MVIX team, and we'll be happy to get you paired up with a consultant. So I want to talk for a moment, folks, about some very common use cases as we look towards the second half of 2021 and going into 2022 for K through 12. One of the first that comes to mind, I think, for most folks is digital menu boards. So in cafeterias, obviously students have to eat. You can use these displays to trigger a lot of relevant info, obviously nutritional and menu content, which is what most parents are concerned about in this context. But kind of back to that whole removing ambiguity for the students, removing anxiety about what they're supposed to do. Whether it's processes or what's coming next in the day for them, or what's coming next in the semester. So a lot of value there in the digital menu board use case. Folks who have students who have not been on site for a while, especially if there's been renovations, obviously it's good to have some sort of refresher content for them to help them navigate the facility, get to their classes so they're not late, obviously get to the dining hall or what have you, find the extracurricular events. When it's after hours and you have parents coming in for events, or family coming in for events, theater productions, whatever it is, very popular, especially in a lot of high schools nowadays, to have touchscreen kiosks, or maybe use a QR code so folks with phones can grab the wayfinding component and then navigate the facility successfully. So a lot of good ways to use this to help people get around. Obviously, in classroom communication, as Miles had mentioned earlier, a great way to kind of bridge that gap between teachers and students, especially while there's a lot of uncertainty right now about how that relationship is going to look in the future. So this can absolutely supplement some of that communication. And then for schools that do have a donor component to it, a very popular use case is donor walls, where you can very specifically target recognition to donors or groups of donors, and obviously use that to potentially drive more donorship as well. So more sponsorship, I should say. So a lot of creative ways to use this today. When it comes to menu boards, usually we recommend you do a quick walk of the cafeteria if you haven't, or if there's been renovations, especially. These in the future, the trend is leaning towards these are going to be used also as directional, kind of almost wayfinding type solutions, which is a little bit of a change for this use case. So make sure you're putting some boots on the ground in the cafeteria if you get a chance. When it comes to wayfinding, take a look at some of the case studies that we have online about wayfinding throughout individual facilities, or if you have a campus in certain environments, that's a very popular way to help folks get around in between buildings. This usually we do a little bit of consulting on these projects to help make sure that the user interface of the wayfinding experience makes sense, especially for the type of student population that you have at that site. So that would be definitely a use case to engage the AOPEN team and the MVIX team directly on if you get a chance. When it comes to classroom communication, honestly, your districts and your individual schools that you work with probably have a better read on their student base than you do. So that's a really good use case to let the district drive, or the individual users at a school drive the content. But we do have a repository of content to help them out and supplement that. There's some pre-made stuff there that's available, and then our design team that we have in-house also helps curate a lot of that content for folks that are using this for classroom communication. So the point is, their customers are not on their own if they don't feel that they have 100% of the content they need. That's an option that we bring to the table. We talked about donor walls. Keep in mind that this is a really great use case to be leveraging either interactive solutions, meaning touchscreen, and video wall style layouts as well, both of which the AOPEN product set supports. So these are typically very high impact solutions. They usually get a lot of attention. They usually make pretty big statements. So we want to make sure we're doing them right, and that's why we lean on you guys as resellers so much. So keep up the great work. I've seen a ton of great install case studies and pictures in the last 12 months for schools that have been undergoing renovation, where they've taken that opportunity to revamp with some high impact digital signage, like video walls, for instance, or even donor walls more specifically. So, hats off to those of you that have been doing that type of work. And I think there's a lot of great opportunity there in the future, which is exciting. A quick case study for you before we wrap up here today is one of the districts we've worked with is Romeo School District. The purpose of the next few slides here, folks, is to give you an idea of how we at MVIX work through the consulting process with these types of schools and these types of districts. So first, we like to identify a challenge or a group of challenges. And in this case, at the district level, it was pretty much static communication. Every school, every location pretty much had, printed stuff, printed signage. So we did some digging with them long before implementation about, what are some things we can change at individual schools, but also as a district standard. And obviously, we know where we wound up, but we'll get to that in a second. Locations are a big thing. This is where we really leverage our reseller relationships here, is that boots on the ground is a game changer. Being at these facilities and actually walking the facility and getting a feel for how users are going to, or the audience is going to view this technology is huge. Put yourself in the place of one of the faculty or staff, put yourself in place of one of the parents. If you can, put yourself in place of one of the kids and try and see, where should I put these screens? How big or small should these screens be? Should they be interactive or not? How is this going to impact the student or the parent or the faculty experience with this technology? And a lot of times that is a huge success factor for how these projects turn out. And in the case of Romeo, that was great. And then lastly, who is going to be a champion at the district level, as well as some of the individual schools? Who was going to take ownership of this solution? Who was going to make sure that new content was getting out when it needed to? And that folks on the Romeo team were, in fact, contributing at the rate that they wanted to keep this a successful deployment. So those are some of the challenges we faced up front. Solution-wise, we actually worked with them to identify multiple digital signage champions, which is usually a best practice. But that meant that everybody district-wise and at the major schools were on the same page about the value of this technology before it went in, about the fact that it should be updated frequently, whether that's an automatic update or that's done by a person. And more importantly, who those people were that were going to be either doing manual updates or monitoring the automatic updates to make sure that everything was going smoothly. So I list that first here because that was obviously a huge make or break for the success of that project, and something that we want to do ideally in every K-12 project that we work on. Obviously, a bunch of displays went in. We integrated with some other solutions, such as I believe their point of sale system and in the cafeteria, and some of their other wayfinding technology that they had. So that was pretty exciting. And we worked with the reseller in that case to provide a bunch of services to get the client up and running. Education on the tool, as we mentioned earlier, training on how to use the software, both upfront and ongoing, some custom content, custom design, and then we do a managed service there as well, where we curate content on an ongoing basis for that customer where they need it. So pretty exciting, and obviously led to a very positive outcome for that specific district. So feel free to grab that case study from the MVIX website at MVIX digitalsignage.com. And obviously let us know if you have any questions there. As a result of this work, about 96% of their students, when they were polled, had higher recall rates and higher retention rates on some of the content that was shown. And I think that's pretty significant across an entire district when you look at the volume of students and the fact that a lot of them had cell phones, tablets readily available at their disposal. That's a pretty significant recall rate there. So that was really exciting. And then recognition for some of the students and some of the faculty as well. That was significantly more prevalent as a result of this technology deployment, along with some other things. But those are some of the big feedback, aspects that we received from the district. And so again, feel free to check out the case study online or any of the other case studies that the MVIX team or the AOPEN team have on some of these success stories. But really a lot happening behind the scenes there to get these types of clients start to finish. But it's not super difficult. If you're having the right discussions, we're headed the right direction, and usually it results in a very positive outcome for these folks. So as far as what we've talked about today, just a quick recap. The biggest, most centralized benefit of this technology is the fact that it's easy to use and easy to update. And that should be, I think, the focus of a lot of what you talk about with these clients is, there's a lot of visual styles happening, a lot of visual communication happening, but don't let that translate to ambiguity for the client about ease of use or anything like that. It's very easy to use technology. It's easy and quick to update. It's remotely manageable. So for those districts that are in a hybrid kind of work environment, which presumably most will be for at least a while, there's the remote management option, which is great. And then improvement in overall communication, things like recall rates, things like retention rates, for instance, at a lower cost than traditional methods like printing things out, for instance. So those are some of the big takeaways. I'm going to hand it over to Miles before he yells at me, because I know I've gone over my time a little bit. If you have any other questions for the MVIX team, please feel free to reach out to our solutions consultant team. You can go to MVIXdigitalsignage.com, MVIX.com, find us on LinkedIn. But thanks for letting me have the floor for a minute, Miles, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about AOPEN.
No problem. Thanks, Mike. And of course, guys, if you have any questions for Mike, put them right in the questions box, and we'll get to them after my section. So let's get started. So Mike brought up a lot of really, really great things. So as I mentioned, what I'm going to talk about first is AOPEN's, how AOPEN approaches this space. and then talk a little bit about how I see the technology evolving in the future. And, you know, Mike already alluded to a lot of those changes that are going to happen and what type of applications are going to definitely happen. So when I look at the education market, whenever I talk to a district level person or a CTO or whatever, when it comes to managing large school districts, they have a few things to say. And the number one thing is always, it's what are the students getting? And number two is, how is it making my life easier? So those are the two things. Mike focused on a lot of that stuff, right? So it's ease of use, support, versatility, and of course, when it comes to what it's doing for the kids, it's that retention rate, it's the branding, it's the communication, it's the security in a lot of cases. And so I'm going to touch on a lot of those aspects that he brought up in a much more tactical sense. So the first one is, of course, when we talk about implementing these systems at a school from a hardware perspective, is the number one thing that tech guys hate is fragmentation, right? They don't want their signage on Windows, their executive laptops on Linux, their students on Chromebooks, their smoothie machine running something else. They want one system across the board, right? And so, you know, MVIX runs on absolutely everything. And as you know, AOPEN makes, you know, hardware across the board, but we're really focusing on Chrome for digital signage for particularly the education market. Why? Because we know that every school pretty much is familiar, knows Chrome, knows how secure it is, knows how easy it is to manage. And so they trust it. And just to say, hey, we're just putting a Chrome device in there, it's going to run MVIX. Your digital signage is going to go great. You already know how to manage it. You're familiar with the system. And much more easy integration instead of something like, oh, you got to open, you know, do this, and oh, you got to, you know, have a whole bunch of different libraries to reinstall stuff, and you have to do all these different licenses and change all these settings. We all know how Chrome is so easy to use in the education space. So that's where we're focused on this solution in particular. And of course, we work with MVIX to directly test the 1.1 with our boxes to make everything smooth as possible. So just to reemphasize this point is, of course, Chrome has continued to move towards dominance in the education section. It's almost synonymous with it, right? Just a few stats up here, obviously millions of students, but also you can see that Google is expanding this Chrome dominance to all sorts of other countries, primarily United States. And the breakdown from states as it can be up to, you can see the scale only goes up to 90, but in certain states it's 60, sorry. But in certain states it's over 90. So districts, when you talk to them about hardware and tech choices, they can be extremely rigid. Like some people only buy certain brand Chromebooks and only use Windows or only use Apple products. But Chrome is currently the leader, and so that's why this package should be just really easy to integrate from a technical perspective, right? So when it comes to Chrome players, our primary player for AOPEN is called the Chromebox Commercial 2. And the main differentiator in the market is that it's the only player designed for digital signage, right? It has specialized features such as better Wi-Fi connectivity. It's completely maintenance free, right? The schools are going to want to run these things forever. So, and it's not like they have a lot of maintenance budget running around to blow out, you know, fan-based media players. You know, it's got 4K playback. It's got all sorts of locking clips on there to make sure you don't get any cord failures. It's got all sorts of stuff. But most importantly, of course, is that not only is it designed for digital signage, it's the only Chrome player with it comes with a 3-year warranty, and it's a 3-year commercial warranty, right? You shouldn't be using a device without a commercial warranty for digital signage, because it's a commercial application. The thing's going to be sitting there. The digital signage is going to be on all day, right? You need a very robust player that'll just run forever. AOPEN players, unlike other types of just regular Chrome boxes that kids use in labs and stuff like this, ours is designed to run for over 5 years. So it really cuts down on that tech budget worry. And it's just going to create a lot more solid solution than if they constantly have to go and futz with the digital signage, which you never want them to do. So that's our primary. As Mike said, this thing will work for video walls, 1-to-1, 2-to-1. This thing's got 2 HDMI ports on the back, so all of it works with MVIX. So and they can help you figure out exactly how many you need and to run what screens. It also, of course, runs touch screens as well. So that's our primary, and of course this device, AOPEN is a channel-based company available through every typical Chrome reseller, as is MVIX licenses. So that's how AOPEN approaches this space specifically with our Chrome-based products. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of where the technology is going and how I see schools adopting this type of technology is really, like I said, you know, the #1 digital signage selling pitch is, how much are you spending on paper signage? Great, this is how much digital signage will cost, right? That's a one-to-one, but schools, you always need to make sure that you stay on message in terms of you're building brand, community, and making sure people are engaged and feel part of a unique atmosphere and a unique community. They know who their authority figures are, all that sort of stuff. So the whole idea transfers from another market, which is called corporate communication, right? Digital signage is essential in corporate communication because it allows you to do consistent, engaging messaging, right? So a lot of people say, why do you need corporate communication when you could just have an email, right? As Mike said, digital signage around a school or a business, it expresses the building. Where are you at? You're at this school. These are the instructors. These are the people who talk to you. These are the events going on, blah, blah, blah. It actually makes you feel engaged with the environment and where you are. So this obviously is going to become a very important growing factor driving digital signage in schools, right? And of course, here's just two examples. So the digital signage, of course, at larger schools can create experiential type, you know, lots of enterprises have these fancy things. This is a screen from Yale School of Business, right? If you ever go to a Google building, they all have, or an enterprise type building, they all have these sort of experiential digital signage that really make you feel like where you are is representing what's being learned there, or, you know, you could have all sorts of data visualizations, or, you know, as Mike showed, you know, art or anything like that on these that really represent the work that's being done at the school. And of course, I stole this right from Mike's slide, the one on the right, communication, communication, communication. What school are we at? St. Mark's. What's going on? School play. There's a photo from the, you know, a parent posted from the soccer game last week. All sorts of that stuff. Is really crucial in terms of engaging. Lunch menu, I remember from when I was a kid, that was the most important thing, bar none, right? Is knowing #1 when lunch is coming and what's for lunch. Because when you're a kid, that's the most exciting thing, right? So all that sort of stuff is super, super critical in my view to this market, right? So I found this information and I definitely wanted to talk about this. I come from a family of educators. I teach about 3-4 times a week in my free time. So the #1 thing when you talk to teachers is that it's not the regular kid that's the problem. It's the really smart kids and some of the kids that are having trouble. Those are the main things. It's really the key students to manage in any class are the outliers. And education in the United States hasn't really changed in about 100 years, right? And so there's not a whole lot of ways to adapt. But the primary outliers I wanted to talk about today is not necessarily the kids are trying to manage getting better or being held back for certain types of studies like math and things like, or history. Everyone learns at different rates. And I think there's going to be other types of technology that address this. But the main one that I've talked to, especially to schools about in the Northwest, is that they have a lot of EL or ESL students, which are basically students that do not speak English as their primary language. So why is this important is because you can use, when you're communicating not only in classrooms, right? What have we been talking about? Communication via digital signage, right? The digital signage can help bridge that gap to multicultural populations, right? If you want to, you know, you don't want kids to do the typical thing. I went to a very multicultural high school, and what happened? Every group, every ethnic group sat at their own table, right? And you want to make sure that the communication is cross all these cultures, and that everyone understands the direction and the messaging that the school is trying to get across, right? So to that point, let's talk a little bit about how multiculturalism and ESL students works at schools. Just in a few slides from the Department of Education. They're a little old, 2015, but generally speaking, from the data, you can see that the EL students are concentrated pretty much in certain regions, right? So you're going to get some schools who are like, no, we basically don't have anyone. And then you're going to find some schools that I've talked to in Seattle that claim that they have 30, 40% Spanish speaking community, right? So it's really important when you engage with them to talk about how the digital signage, like Mike said, can be updated instantly. You can put all sorts of different translations on there. All that stuff is super easy to do when you can just edit things, fix things, and have stuff translated on the fly. When this is the other, to reemphasize the point that it's different statewide, but this just give you example. These are the states with the most fragmentation, as I would call it, and it was completely surprising to me, right? When I looked at this data, the first thing that popped out to me was, of course, I wouldn't expect that 30% of the EL population in Michigan speaks Arabic, right? So you never know when you go in. Every school has these challenges, and being able to update and dynamically approach your communication, your messaging will help bring community and bridge the gap. Of course, on the left, these purple bars are mostly Spanish, and that should be the expectation, is that you're going to primarily, the primary EL group at most schools is going to be Spanish speaking. So just to reemphasize my point here is that Google Classroom Auto Translate is a key technology, right? When schools are doing one-to-one Chromebooks and they're using Google Classroom, you can auto translate all the pages, you can auto translate all the lessons. Some kids, even the young ones, I had a school district tell me that they just give the young kids a tablet as long as they're at the correct reading level, and they can watch the Google Translate, spell out what the teacher said. So so these ways to better engage your ESL or EL students are very critical to this type of technology. All right, so the real technological advancement that I could sort of see coming here is, of course, the stuff that's really taken off in retail, right? So indoor or not localization, indoor positioning or geo-positioning, excuse me, is becoming crucial to retail, right? Because, Burger King wants to know when you're 10 feet away, 1 mile away, 10 feet away, you can pay from your car, the menu sent to your car, all that stuff's coming in the future. So how can some of that technology apply to the education market? As Mike said, he mentioned a key interaction already, where the digital signage is interacting with the cell phone, right? You just have the wayfinding, and it can send the directions straight to your phone as long as it has the integrated map of the campus or the building, things like that. So when we talk about indoor positioning, what is the technology really required? It can be a lot of stuff. So you can see these are sort of like the old beacon style. They look sort of futuristic, like they're out of some sci-fi movie. But in actuality, an AOPEN player can act as a Bluetooth beacon, right? So if you have a whole bunch of digital signage players, AOPEN digital signage players at a school, if they're positioned correctly, you can actually tell when someone's near one, and you can actually locate people via their cell phone in a building, right? Using all this new technology, which is exactly how they know how close you are to getting your Big Mac. Same sort of concept applies if you were to implement this type of technology to school. And as we've seen in retail too, the digital signage, you're going to be able to interact with them more and more via your cell phone. That 90% stat is pretty crazy that Mike brought up, right? So if everyone has this technology as a child now, you need to integrate it. You either got to take two perspectives. My mom always had people put their cell phone in a bin, don't touch it, and listen to me lecture. But integrating it in certain types of communication can be effective as well. So what sort of applications am I thinking for localization is, I keep saying localization, or indoor positioning. Of course, there's some systems for this already, but if everyone's going to have a cell phone on them, you can just detect who's in the room, right? Every kid if they have an app on their phone or their Chromebook, the Chromebook identifies itself to the AOPEN player, and boom, there you go, sends information to a web portal, and you don't have to take attendance. You know absolutely everyone's name of the 30 kids or sometimes 100 kids that are in the class, right? As Mike mentioned, wayfinding, not only campus-wide and building, but also eventually I think you're going to have basically an application that tells you, can see where you are in the building and be like, hey, you're late for 202, you should walk down this hallway, you got 2 minutes, or you're already 5 minutes late, stuff like that. More active, proactive scheduling and things like that. And of course, the key application in schools is emergencies. You know, there's lots of different types of applications. You know, I have a friend who works for a dev firm, and you know, a school blew millions and millions of dollars developing this type of emergency system where it allowed everyone to sort of immediately record how many students were present in an emergency situation. You know, this would either be in a fire drill, an earthquake drill, tornado drill, whatever. And you had to break down the groups and all this sort of stuff. But you know, if you have positioning and you can detect where every student is anyway, then you know if there's 2 kids stuck in a room somewhere, right? So this technology, this locating technology can be pretty powerful. The next thing, step in terms of emergency and security is, of course, the most controversial thing in the United States, which is, do we need to know the student's location, but do we also need to know who's in the school, right? So whether or not camera systems and facial recognition get more adopted into making schools more secure is yet to be seen. So we'll really see if that happens. My opinion is that it's probably not going to be, because the people making technological decisions about schools, it's all about safety of the students and what is it getting the students. So it would have to be an extremely secure, you know, hack-proof system that really kept who's in the building and where they are safe, that data extremely safe, before I think any school board would approve that type of technology. So, but who knows? It may be implemented and it may catch on, and that's where we may be going in the future. But until then, digital signage with more interactive cell phone technology, engaging with those students and creating more of a community sense, I think is where we're going, at least near term. All right, so to sum it up, as we mentioned, you want to, for the education market, it's really focused on a few things. Offering an easy to use Chrome solution, and you're working with districts that don't have a ton of time. As Mike mentioned, you have to get a champion. It's not, these people don't have full-time digital signage content management staff, right? So the key thing that Mike mentioned is that it's really super easy to use, because they have those support teams that can help you out, help you show what buttons to click, how to put videos up, how to change stuff, all that sort of stuff, because you're going to be dealing with people who it's not their full-time job. It's probably their third job, or their third thing that they got to do. So it's the extra hand holding. And of course, the other thing that Mike mentioned that's extremely important is they're very reseller friendly, right? They'll work with the client and the reseller to make sure the entire solution it's easy peasy, easy to set up, and easy to implement, right? Second aspect from a sales standpoint and a channel friendliness standpoint is, of course, that the especially industry only perpetual license. As you mentioned, schools, they don't want to plan multi-year budgets, so perpetual is good to go. And of course, you get an AOPEN player that's going to last a really, really long time. So you get the software and the player, it's going to last forever. Easy peasy. You have to make these things easy for schools. They don't want some niche thing that's just going to break on them constantly. They want to focus on the things that are important to them and important to the students. It always comes back to the students, which is how is this helping them? How is this enriching their lives and things like that, right? And last point, of course, that I made about our AOPEN Chrome players is that they're the only Chrome devices designed for digital signage, great features, and they have that 3-year commercial warranty out of the box. So that's the conclusions today. So do we have any questions? I don't think so. I don't think so. So let's wrap it up. So let's finish up this webinar. So how are we doing for time as well? Oh yeah, we're good on time. Okay, so to wrap things up for today, first off, I want to say thank you to Mike Killian for joining us and talking about some of the recent work that he's been doing with K through 12 and what MVIX is offering and a lot of their features and applications. Of course, AOPEN, as I mentioned, we make all sorts of type of devices, touch screens, all-in-ones. We do Windows, Linux, Chrome. We do all sorts of stuff. And our primary goal is to work with great solution providers, not only from our resellers, but of course like MVIX, who's a great CMS, to make sure that we deliver great, long-lasting, easy-to-use solutions. And so yeah, we just have a bunch of different solutions across the board. And I think that's going to be it for today. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Of course, check out MVIX. We'll post this VOD to the landing page if you had to dip out for a little bit. And as Mike mentioned, we'll make sure that that formal use case, education use case is on there. You can see all the work and all the decisions that were made, how it was implemented, all that stuff on there. So we'll put that along with the VOD as well for this particular webinar. Otherwise, that's it for me today. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Miles. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.